Welcome to another episode of Liberty Entrepreneurs, where we explore how to build freedom through the entrepreneurial process. Our goal is to provide you with the tools and mindset needed to create your lifestyle of independence and flexibility. I'm your host, Amanda Mill, and this is episode number 5, New Age Marketing, Analytics, and Partnering Up for Success, with our guest, Joe Weaver, Chief Technology Officer of Awareness and Analysis Partners, which is a technology firm providing social media data analytics to clients in political campaign management, policy operations, and corporate strategic communication sectors. Please follow us on Twitter at Liberty E Podcast and Facebook /Liberty Entrepreneurs. Enjoy the show. With me today is Joe Weaver, CTO and partner of A2P, based in Alexandria, Virginia. Joe began his entrepreneurial ventures early, but it was only a few years ago that he was recruited for his dream job, where he mixes together modern advertising and politics. Joe currently resides in Delaware with his wife and their 2 dogs. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks for having me.
Where did life take you after college? What kind of jobs have you been working in?
I've always worked around the computer science kind of e-commerce type of space, but always kept my foot in the kind of political and policy realm. When I got out of school, I started interning with the Independence Institute. I stayed there for probably 3 or 4 years, and then really ventured out on my own to start a company. Did some kind of web development type of stuff, some communications type of technical stuff, email marketing, things like that, and then I kept that going until I got a job offer out in DC, and I did that for probably a year, and then went off and worked at a PR firm, and did that for probably about 2 years. And since then, I got involved with A2 Partners, which is kind of a startup, slash kind of venture. It's back in the technical space, but we have public policy type of clients, so get to overlap with some statistics, analysis type of work, and analytics, marketing, and I basically do that for public policy and communications companies, and sometimes I get into the political fray.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And just for our listeners who aren't aware of the Independence Institute, that is a libertarian think tank out of Denver, Colorado, which is actually where the 2 of us met when I was an intern there and you had been working there for quite some time. But I do recall you were doing some pretty serious work for them and being a little underpaid. And when I met you, you were looking to do something bigger, and here you are doing that. So that is always really good to hear the success stories. Let's talk a little more about your entrepreneurial ventures. How did it happen necessarily?
I mean, I think the first company or business idea I had was selling baseball cards when I was about 8 or 9 years old. So I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I've always wanted to find interesting ways to make money. I didn't really try to go out and venture doing things, legally, professionally, however you want to look at it, until probably 2006. But I've always really been kind of motivated by business interests. So I guess probably my whole life, but really I didn't really go full time into it probably until 2008.
How did you basically jump from the PR firm to actually becoming a partner with A2 Partners?
I actually got recruited by a guy that I guess you could consider him to be like maybe a venture capitalist, just definitely somebody with some business insight. I met him in 2011, and he pulled my team together to basically take sort of what he was doing in a kind of professional setting, non-political, non-industrial type of setting. And I basically I was very interested in politics, very interested in the news cycle, very interested in media. And so I was a good fit for this team that was brought together to, basically figure out a way to take kind of higher level math and technology and science and apply it to the public policy space.
And would you say there was anything you did specifically to, sort of make this happen? Like, were you doing a lot of networking? Were you trying to get your name out there? How do you think this guy found you?
I actually met him in a meeting. It was through a previous company and previous employer that just by happen chance that he was invited to have a meeting with us. Nothing actually ever happened business wise there, but I just kept in contact and ran into him and sometime in 2013. And yeah, it was just it worked out because we had similar interests, and he had worked in a non-political, non-policy space for a long time. Started his own company out of college, and didn't really have a lot of experience in the field that I'm currently in. So it was a good match. And the political kind of public policy area isn't necessarily the highest most technically advanced area to work in. So it was kind of nice to actually find some people that wanted to do advanced technological type of engagement, marketing, analysis, and then that type of space.
Yeah, you have always been an advocate for that kind of thing, and obviously it's paid off for you. It's definitely something that's been working for you and your company. So in a way, it was a bit of luck that he found you, but at the same time, it was you doing your due diligence, being a really good employee, being really good at what you do, kind of having that niche market, focusing on certain things, and then, like you said, staying in touch with this person because you so badly wanted this entrepreneurial experience. You just made sure that it happened. So that's great. That's good for others to know different ways that you can get started on this path. Doesn't always mean going about it alone, because you obviously got recruited. You got a team of people with you. So I'm sure that would put a lot of people's minds at ease. So you have others along with them for the ride.
Yeah, you just got to stay at it. I mean, it's a harder path to take for sure. It's a lot easier working for somebody else, but I think the benefits will far outweigh the security that you get from working for somebody else. Once you start seeing your clients come in and the money come in, the freedom that you get from working independently, and not having to report to any corporation or government or entity, whatever it be, it's just in my opinion, it's more fulfilling.
What were, in addition to it being more fulfilling, maybe elaborate, what were the goals and motivations that made you want to take this kind of security risk?
It's just part of my personality, I guess. That's that risk taker kind of side of me. I don't feel complete without getting involved in something and trying to push the envelope on technology or science or just making a difference on things. And in my own little way, I get to do things that other people don't get to do by getting into the depths of how policy, science, technology all collide. So I get to learn quite a bit about people and how they think and what they do and why they do things that they do. And I can take that knowledge that I've gained over time and I can apply it to something that adds value to companies that are out there that I work with. So the big key there is that some of the stuff that I get to work in, it hasn't been proven. It's been proven in the industries, banking and kind of defense contractor type of space, but it's not been proven in policy necessarily. So to be able to go in and use some of the technologies that have come from other spaces under the other industries and successfully apply them to this less I would say less sexy field is definitely, I enjoy it. I find it interesting. I find it fun.
Will you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now? Maybe a little bit of a description about A2 Partners, and maybe tell us a little about your daily routine as being a self-employed individual.
I essentially use a lot of public data that you can get. This isn't private data in any sense. It's stuff that you can get from governments, agencies, things that are kind of publicly posted on the web. I gather all that information and I organize it, and then I run analysis on it. And then we work through our clients, through some of the data sets that they have. That they'll produce, customer databases, responses, polls, survey type of data, and we'll look for overlaid information, kind of indicators between larger public data sets and these smaller kind of sample sets you'll get from clients. And where we see patterns overlap, we see indicators that there's something there, that's where we'll use advertising to engage with a given population. So the goal could be, small donor fundraising. It could be, take an action on something, to sign petitions, to tell your local politician to do something a certain way. But the idea is we take all this information, we analyze it through analytics to learn more about a population. So essentially, you can save money on advertising and get a good return from any investment into advertising. So, essentially, I'm an advertiser, but I'm a modern advertiser. I'm spending most of my time working with social type of systems like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, but it overlays with old traditional databases that might come from like radio type of environments or direct marketing type of environments. So it's I'm taking the old and the new and I'm mixing them together, and I'm finding ways to make money by offering a good value to the clients that I do have.
Yeah, and from what I hear, you're doing a good job. Didn't you recently hit your $1 million mark as a company?
Yeah, that was just recently. We went over about our first million in sales. So we're growing. We've got people that are working for us in Asia, North America, and Europe. So we've got clients in Europe and the U.S., obviously all over the U.S. So we're starting to grow.
Yes, and of course, with full disclosure, I am one of the consultants that does a little bit of work for you guys on the side, and I very much enjoy it. What I think is interesting is obviously you guys are doing a great job, and you're definitely putting your talents to use. But you're kind of one of those people that people love to hate because you're taking my personal private information and trying to sell me things. But I think what people fail to grasp is, as long as it's not the government taking this information, it's basically there to not only help you and your end, but also help them in some ways. Because, like you said, you're reaching out to them about certain things that involve their legislators or laws that are trying to be passed that they might want to have some say in or they might want to be aware of. So I think you're offering not only your clients a service, but also the individuals that you're reaching out to with personal information. And of course, it's not always their personal information, as you said. Sometimes it's analyzed data where you're sort of matching lookalikes, if you will, to other people who are interested in a topic. So finding them that way. But nonetheless, I think it's a very interesting, cool thing that you're doing. What would you say are some maybe mistakes that you've made that other listeners might be able to learn from?
Trying to do everything myself. I think the company that I started in 2006 was really rough because I tried to be the sales guy at the same time I was trying to do the behind the scenes work that you would do in the office, and having a good partnership and working with people that are motivated to accomplish business, but are different than have different skill sets that aren't necessarily my skill set. They're better at sales, they're better at marketing, they're better at interacting with clients, they're better at account management. Like those aren't necessarily, some of those things aren't necessarily my direct. They're not my highest skill sets. I'm not very good at some of these things. So when I first started, trying to be this chief sales guy and try to be the chief technology officer, nope. That's not necessarily a good mix. It's very hard to do those at the same time and actually bring money in. So I think partnerships, picking the correct partners and working with the right type of clients is basically the big lesson that I've learned over the years.
Yeah, it does make sense. We all are good at certain things and not so good at other things. But what has changed for you from, going from working for somebody else to essentially working for yourself?
Well, working for somebody else, it's you've basically got maybe a handful of bosses. When you work for yourself and you have partners, you're working together as a team. So the big difference for me is when you work for somebody else, you don't necessarily always agree with what's going on. You don't get to see the bigger picture. You don't understand what it is you're doing and how it has a full impact on the world around you. When you work for somebody, when you work for yourself and you're working with a team, you get to be more hands-on and be involved in the decision-making process. You have more control of your own future. It's a lot harder, but once you get used to it and you kind of figure out how things are going to work and what is cost-effective to do with your time, you basically self-manage. And I think that's something that I struggled with. That was probably the worst employee in the world as some of my previous managers. And it's not necessarily they were bad people or I was a bad person. It's just that I didn't understand what the big goal, the big idea was. And when you start working for yourself and you start dealing with the whole grand idea of the business, it makes it easier on me. And I think it's easier for me to work with people. With people is the key there. With, not for. And I think a lot of libertarians are that way. They want to work. They want to be a big part of the decision-making process. They don't want to be told what to do. It's pretty common. But I think it's really hard for libertarians, particularly people that are very ideologically in line with libertarian views, to find partners. So if you can do that, especially can find someone that maybe doesn't necessarily agree with you politically, but they will help you shine when it comes to what you're doing in business, that actually gives you more freedom at the end of the day. Because you get that money that you bring in isn't tied to somebody else's budget. It's something that you get to decide to do with, and so you have more say over what happens in your own life. So I'm kind of an entrepreneurial libertarian. I'm not necessarily a political libertarian. I think that working for yourself is probably the best way to learn more about libertarian values and taxes and the things that really impact you. And I think it's something that at some point, if you really think you're a libertarian, you should try at some point in your life. And I think that if you really want to make an impact in the world, get with small business people, because they're the ones I think that understand things the best in terms of what happens on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. Now, going along the libertarian lines of trying to advance freedom, would you say there are any ways that your company or your journey through entrepreneurship has brought more freedom for others? Perhaps your clients even?
Well, I think particularly with the clients, because I'm in kind of such an advertising type of space, that we're showing them that there's ways to do advertising that's more personalized. I mean, before you said, we use personal data to kind of look for lookalikes in this kind of larger audience. Well, the truth is, I don't really care about you as an individual personally. Like, I don't care about your personal data. I care about how that data all kind of comes together in an aggregate way that would put you into categories. So I look for, patterns that would be like, empty nesters and how they engage online. That there's a pattern inside of there. I don't care if you personally are an empty nester. I care about what people that would be categorized as empty nesters do online and how they interact with the software and the hardware that they have, the devices that are out there. And so I think with my clients, I think a lot of them in the past have relied heavily on radio, TV, and these kind of direct mail type of methods to engage with people for fundraising or just general outreach and persuasion. Using social and kind of connecting those different data sources together, you can start to see how different groups of people that might be in agreement on 90% of the things do things differently when it comes down to what their daily lives look like. And so by breaking my clients' populations down into these like smaller segments and teaching them how people just think differently, they're better at marketing themselves. And if you're going to buy a ton of ads, you might want to know how people engage before you actually spend the amount of money. So frankly, I save them money and I give them a better return on their investment.
Yeah, that's definitely increasing their freedom for sure.
It just gives them more economic. It gives them more economic freedom. It gives them more economic wealth, right? Political freedom, I don't know. I sometimes I wonder if anything I do in the political side of things actually really has that much of an impact. But I know that giving people more decisions of where to better spend their money and how they spend their money, I definitely am having a pretty big impact in that space.
What advice would you give to young aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to start their own business?
Look at the startup space. You don't necessarily have to join a startup, but learn about what it means to be a founder of a company or an organization and what you have to go through to get there. And the partners, particularly, you'd probably want to bring along for the ride. If you think about, the big tech companies in the past, in the 80s and 90s, there was always Steve Jobs had Steve Wozniak. I mean, he didn't build the hardware. He didn't program the stuff himself. He worked with someone to pull it off. And so they're both very visionary in their view of the world at the time, but neither one of those guys could have done everything alone. So find people that you're willing to work with, that you enjoy being around, that can make you shine by them focusing on their abilities and you focus on your abilities. Just find someone to partner with, because I think that makes it a lot easier.
And what characteristics would you say make a successful entrepreneur?
You never give up. You can fail, but you never give up. Failure is allowed, but to be a successful entrepreneur, you're just never allowed to give up.
Got to keep at it.
Yeah.
All right, that makes sense. So let's go into the lightning round of questions. I just got 3 different questions for you. Can you share a tool, shortcut, or hack that's helped you to succeed?
Well, I'm a programmer, so I think there's only so much you can do inside of Excel. So if you can teach yourself how to program, just basic stuff, how to manipulate data, I think that I actually use some of the skill sets I have in being a programmer and doing my own taxes. I don't miss one deduction. I mean, if you you run your own company and you're a really small business person, at some point you get all that stuff up. And I actually learned to programmatically deal with it. So programming, scripting, and knowing how to connect data sources is probably the biggest hack that I've learned in my life. And it's helped me, not just kind of business wise, it's helped me personally get better at things.
What would you say is your most influential book?
I like the Hernando de Soto economic books. I do agree with his view. I don't know how to solve it, but he's got a concept in there called dead capital, which is basically where you can't really take the value of like a home or a property or something like that and turn it into something that's useful if the government gets in the way. If there's some kind of external force that basically says you're not, they call it the extra legal sector, I believe. But that one has had a lot of influence on me.
Okay. And what are the most influential, or who is the most influential entrepreneur or role model for you?
Oh, I don't know. Entrepreneur. If you get into the startup junkies, the kind of venture capitalists, they're all sharks. I respect them. And kind of it's not like I'd want to necessarily emulate them 100%, but I respect them. I pay a lot of attention to Sean Parker, co-founder of Facebook, the Napster guy. I think he's a really interesting character. Elon Musk, I don't necessarily agree with everything he does or the way he does business, but I think it's really interesting following him. Anybody that's really been in the marketing space as well. There's a couple, people out there, the old kind of marketers. I just follow advertising pretty heavily. I think it's really interesting. I was a fan of Mad Men, although if you followed the TV series Mad Men, there's an episode where they start getting into computing and they're afraid that everyone's going to lose their job because the computers come in. I'm basically the guy that was advocating for the computers. So, SpaceX with Musk is definitely interesting. The relationship between him and governance and NASA and all that, that's very, I find that interesting.
Great. Well, thank you so much for all those answers in the lightning round. And thank you very much for coming on today and talking with us about your entrepreneurial experiences and everything. If our listeners are interested in perhaps advertising with your company, what is your website?
It is a2pllc.com.
Simple enough. And then I assume if they go to that website, they can find contact information for you guys.
Well, I'm not really a web developer at this point. The website's there. It's really basic. I mean, the best way probably to get get a hold of me if you're interested is just drop me an email. It's just weaver@a2pllc.com.
Well, I hope our listeners will consider contacting you if they have any advertising needs, especially perhaps bigger organizations that want to get their name out there or want to get something done. I think you guys do excellent work. So again, thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Yep, thank you.